Welcome to the podcast series on GBV Learning Impact, funded by the Safe from the Start project. I am your host, Liloba Paul, Senior Learning and Development Officer on topics related to gender-based violence. This work is a collaboration between the UNHCR Division of International Protection, the regional bureaus, and the Division of Human Resources Global Learning and Development Center in Budapest. It is my pleasure to have with me today Brandon Lee, Associate Resettlement and Complementary Pathways Officer in Guatemala. Thank you for joining me from Guatemala City.
Thank you, Liloba. I am super pleased to be here and once again work with you. It's always a blast to work with you.
Thank you so much, and also with you. Could you tell us a bit about yourself? Where did you previously work, and how long have you been with UNHCR? Maybe you could tell us what you're covering in your current role.
Yeah, well, I started in 2017 with UNHCR working in Costa Rica in the regional legal unit in the at the time SUV and child protection unit. Then I then moved to work at the northern border with Nicaragua at the Upala field unit to work on community-based protection, working directly with the people and responding to the Nicaraguan situation at the time. My current role is in resettlement. So I'm working in Guatemala. I also previously worked as a caseworker in Honduras. So I was able to incorporate a lot of the experience I had in the SUV and child protection unit to all these other roles in the field and in resettlement. So I guess we are going to talk about that in a while.
Yes, we are. And we're here to talk about GBV learning impact and to follow the results chain. So thanks for telling us a little bit about yourself. And let's get into our topic now. Which example of GBV learning would you like to highlight?
So I would like to highlight when I was working precisely in the northern border of Costa Rica, in Costa Rica, Nicaragua. In the field office in Opala, we did a radio show called Integrando Voces or Integrating Voices. This radio show was present in 5 communities in the northern region of Costa Rica. Yes, at that time there was an increased conflict within Nicaragua due to the re-election, and post-election violence, and there was a lot of influx of people into Costa Rica, and it just kept coming. It never stopped. Previously, in the year before I entered to the operation, participatory assessment was conducted in several communities. We saw that there was there was a gap in the access to the information that people had. So the radio show was developed together with other interventions, but the idea was give people access to information, to know what was the process to request asylum, to know what is a refugee, to know what were the rights. Also, it was very important for them to know how the gender-based violence was addressed there. So we launched a radio program that was present in the main radio stations of 4 or 5 communities, as we identified that this was the main channel for information and news to that community. People were very into listening to the news there, and maybe they didn't have a lot of connectivity to internet and other ways to access information. So the radio was key. So our radio program included interviews with partner organizations, local institutions, and other relevant actors in the community. We also even included community representatives and leaders in the shows. They shared their stories, integrating the communities, what were their challenges, and what they saw that could be even improved in the way that they access services and information. It was not only listen to them, but even by also the members of the host community. So it was a very interesting experience because it was a space that a lot of people tune into. And I would like to highlight one of these programs because in this one we discussed gender-based violence with members of Gender-Based Violence Prevention Network. That was also at a time of the 8th of March. We discussed what was gender-based violence, what were some types of GBV, but moreover, we focus on addressing types of violence, discussing how to recognize it when there is a type of gender-based violence, whether it be sexual, physical, psychological, emotional, whether it be denial of services or resources, and also, share with our listeners ways in which they can access these services to GBV survivors.
Yes, it sounds like the radio show did a lot to connect different actors with the local community and displaced community. Which actions did you take as a result of the learning intervention?
Well, our radio show Integrating Voices gave a space to a network of community leaders that we helped establish. So we use this platform to address GBV and have them assume roles to also share with other members of the community information on how to access these GBV related services. We were able to disseminate to asylum seekers and the refugee community of the existence of a Red de la Prevención de la Violencia, which was this violence prevention network, which for us was very important for the people we serve to understand how the institutions work, how they address GBV, and how all the members of the community could access to these GBV related services to GBV survivors. So there was a lot of capacity building in the network of community leaders, community representatives, as they were our bridge with the rest of the community members. They always were so eager to help with new arrivals, to give them information how to integrate, how to access the asylum process, but also how to address GBV, because unfortunately in this rural side of Costa Rica and a lot of people fleeing Nicaragua, a lot of them unfortunately were survivors of GBV. So that's why it was very fundamental for us to focus on this. We managed them to understand that, GBV is a layered topic and is not only limited to physical violence, as it is also a common misconception in this rural side of the country. We really wanted to deepen in more sessions and have it more frequent and more elaborated.
This bridge with the broader community seems like a critical shift also to create that contact and to be able to go into deeper sessions afterwards. What outcomes related to GBV did you see or experience in the operation as a result of your actions?
Well, as I mentioned before, the community leaders were our bridge to the community. When they wanted to be involved, enhancing their understanding on GBV also resulted in new members of the community understanding what was GBV, how to access information on GBV, and other available types of assistance, such as food kits, emergency kits, legal services, livelihoods programs, and cash assistance, CBI. As it is a field office, usually there are a lot of simultaneous activities that are done daily. But specifically regarding our radio show, this platform also had a space to invite a lot of relevant actors for addressing gender-based violence in the community and generate a common understanding of a sensitive topic that is, as I mentioned before, a lot of these refugees and asylum seekers and even members of the host community are survivors of gender-based violence, as it is very prevalent in this part of the country. And even we also saw a lot of engagement from the institutions that assisted GBV survivors and also from our partners.
And what were some of the other challenges that you faced?
Well, we would have liked to measure more the effect that it was having on the community. We did not have a way to measure it, so we did not have indicators at time, how many people were accessing new information on GBV, right? So also we did not measure exactly how many people were listening to a radio show, to the GBV program that we're having, and to what extent, you know. So we would have liked to know more, but we had very limited resources and time. As I mentioned before, this was at a high point of an influx of new arrivals of asylum seekers as the elections of Nicaragua were recently held. So it was a little bit difficult to keep track on that.
Let's go further in that direction to talk about impact. As a result of this GBV learning outcome in the operation, what impact did you see on the lives of people forced to flee?
Oh, that's precisely the point. The impact of our actions had just started to show, as we saw a lot of interest from our community leaders to continue learning, you know, and growing so they could better help other members of the community, especially the new arrivals. We identified that people wanted to be involved in UNHCR interventions. Again, a lot of commitment from members of the community, both men and women from different age groups, and a lot of interest in participating in other spaces that were not necessarily ours, developed solely by UNHCR, but also by other stakeholders in the community. It's a very diverse space. So there was an increased interest also in participating in initiatives presented by the Violence Prevention Network and also other activities made by the local government. Yeah, there was a lot of interest and engagement that we were just starting to see at that time. They wanted to learn more on the Violence Prevention Network, especially in having more tools on preventing and reporting GBV to share with other members of the community. A lot of things could be advanced from this commitment, a higher level of engagement that could involve the asylum seekers and refugees with the host communities, which, it also benefits their integration process. One barrier to following up were the contracts in UNHCR that prevented us from staying long enough to see some of that deeper impact. There is a lot of staff rotation, and although there are attempts to have a long-term strategy, on a daily basis, the priorities are constantly changing, responding a lot to emergencies or last-minute activities. This truly affects the impact that could be seen in the communities as the attention is diluted to several things. Gender-based GBV should be more prioritized.
This is indeed part of the reality when we have so many different priorities in an emergency operation, and we see that in many different operations and across regions. What impact did the GBV learning intervention have on you and your current work in resettlement?
Well, this radio show was very very fun to make. It also provided another dynamic that we don't usually see on our daily work. We are usually, doing our daily task, doing interviews, or in the case of resettlement, just interview after interview, or in protection, working the field, just responding to whatever it arises. But working in this, having a radio show involving so many people and so many actors really gave a lot of perspective. And it really helped us understand that these spaces could be created, Not everything needs to be, your terms of reference. You could go a step further and be more creative. And as a result, you can also involve a lot of people in very interesting projects. Furthermore, in my current role, because of the work that I have on GBV, I am also better able to recognize GBV on the interviews that we do, trying to provide people to other durable solutions that may not be into local integration. and the grounds for international protection and referred a person in need of GBV services. So I always have a mindset to have a survivor-centered approach in every interview process that I make. It cannot be forgotten. It should not be forgotten. So that's definitely, a big impact that it had in my work, and it will continue to have in the future. And it also, whenever I have the chance, I also share with my colleagues this experience that we had. It's a very interesting way to discuss about GBV and have this approach that definitely cannot be overlooked.
That is a good suggestion for others to carry from this interview. And is there any other suggestion or advice that you want to share with other members of the UNHCR workforce that might help them to show the outcome of GBV learning on their operation and the impact it has on people's lives?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, as I said, from this experience, we could definitely be a bit more proactive, have more initiative to give spaces to people to share their work. Everyone can share their little grain of sand that can change people's perspective and let them know that they can be involved and participate. We can use different spaces. We use the radio, but we can do podcasts like we're doing now. We can create other opportunities to involve people to work in this area in GBV and better integrate it with other topics. We don't have to separate it. GBV is always present in this line of work that we do, right? So otherwise, our interaction, for example, with government counterparts would have remained more formal with more barriers. So this also helped remove some of these barriers and create synergy with them. It definitely helped how we interacted later with them. It even wanted to participate in other programs that we had. I did not have the chance to see a lot of that, but they wanted to be included. And of course, always to prioritize GBV in all operations and contexts. There will always be something that requires the immediate response of the operation, but GBV should not be relegated to the bottom of the to-do list.
And thank you so much for your time with us here today. And I have just one more question for you. What do you see as a way to create a lasting impact from GBV learning that's more sustainable? For example, when funding is greatly reduced or resources are a bare minimum.
Of course. Well, there is always a space to apply a GBV learning experience. As I mentioned, sometimes people tend to separate it from RSD or resettlement or CVI or other types of assistance or other units. But in this separation, people tend to forget the importance that it has. And also definitely work closely with the local institutions, identifies existing structures that may already be working or developing strategies to address GBV throughout the community and allow people's voices to be heard. Sometimes there is work already been done, so not everything needs to be on the back of UNHCR. We just need to know where we can get in and work together with these local actors. Just have an open mind that structures may already be there, even from other a little bit more informal community structures that may even be doing a lot of interesting work. Definitely identify them and work closely with them.
Thank you, Brandon, for your time with us and sharing one of your experiences on the impact GBV learning had on you, the border operation you worked in at the time, and also your work today.
You are very welcome. It was super nice being here. Thank you for having me and keep up the good work.
Thank you for joining us. To all of our listeners, do tune in to the next podcast in our series from the GLDC on GBV learning impact in UNHCR.